My daughter-in-law Emma snorted like a pig when the lawyer said I'd only get an old flower painting. My son Jake got Daddy's $2 million trucking business. And I got what looked like something from a yard sale. That nasty laugh told me what my 43 years of marriage meant to my dead husband Frank. If you're watching, hit that subscribe button and tell me where you're from in the comments. Let me tell you how this sweet story started. It was March 10th, exactly 6 weeks after Frank's funeral. We sat in Lawyer Peterson's fancy office like actors in a movie. Big wooden desk, fancy chairs, and enough anger to light up our whole town. The lawyer cleared his throat and read Frank's will out loud. Sarah Mitchell gets the painting called Spring Flowers that hangs in the kitchen, he said slowly. I sat there quiet while Emma almost bounced in her chair like a happy kid. Then came the big news. And to my son Jake Mitchell, I give Mitchell Trucking Company with all trucks, contracts, and money worth about $2 million. That's when Emma lost her mind. She clapped her hands together and grinned at me with mean eyes. Well, well, she said, looking at me like I was trash. Looks like you were just a useless old wife after all. Her smile was sharp as a knife. Jake looked uncomfortable but said nothing. My own son sat there like a statue while his wife insulted the woman who raised him. The woman who worked at the diner for 15 years to help pay for his college. I looked at Emma's smug face and smiled back sweetly. How nice, I said calmly. Little did I know that ugly flower painting would give me everything I needed to wipe that grin off her face forever. After leaving the lawyer's office, Emma was already calling her sister to brag about the money. Jake walked beside me without talking until we reached our cars. Mom, he started, but I held up my hand. Don't, Jake. Just don't. I got in my car and drove home, leaving him standing there looking guilty but not guilty enough to do anything about it. The painting was even uglier than I remembered. I picked it up from the bank that day and stood in my living room holding what looked like a child's messy artwork. Frank always said some local artist painted it in the 1980s, but I'd seen better art on refrigerators. 5 days passed since the will reading, and Emma's mean words kept playing in my head like a broken record. Useless old wife. Those words hurt more than a bee sting. I decided to hang the terrible painting in my bedroom, mainly because Frank always kept it there. The painting was heavier than I thought as I tried to put it on the wall hook. One corner slipped from my hands and hit my dresser hard. That's when I heard it. A soft rustling sound like paper moving inside the frame. My heart started beating fast. I laid the painting face down on my bed and looked at the back. The frame was old with small metal clips that had gotten loose over time. One corner of the brown paper on the back had come unstuck and was curling up. Frank had always been secretive about this painting, almost protective. Maybe there was something more to it. I carefully peeled back more of the paper backing. Sure enough, something was tucked between the canvas and frame. My fingers found what felt like a photograph. I worked it out gently, not wanting to break whatever it was. When I pulled it free and flipped it over, my blood turned to ice. It was a picture of a woman in a hotel room. A woman I knew right away, Emma. She looked about 4 years younger and was wearing hardly any clothes, laughing at something. Her hair was messy like she just woke up. But here's what made my hands shake. This photo had to be at least 4 years old based on how Emma looked. Jake and Emma had only been married for 5 years. I sat down on my bed, still holding the photograph. Frank must have known about this. But why had he hidden it instead of telling Jake? That's when I noticed something else in the background. On the hotel nightstand was a man's expensive watch with a gold band. I knew that watch. I'd seen it recently somewhere. Sleep was impossible that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling with that photograph burning a hole in my nightstand drawer. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma's mocking face from the lawyer's office. Well, this useless old wife had found something very interesting. By morning I'd made up my mind. I needed to find out more about this photo, when it was taken and who took it. Most importantly, I had to figure out why Frank hid it instead of showing Jake what kind of woman he married. I drove to Jake's trucking office around 10 o'clock. Mitchell Trucking was busy with drivers loading trucks and mechanics fixing engines. Jake was in a meeting, but I waited, drinking coffee and watching his workers. Funny how people looked at you different when you weren't the boss's mother anymore. Just the boss's mother who got the leftovers. "Mom," Jake said when he finally came out, looking stressed. "This is a surprise. Everything okay? Just wanted to see how you're handling Daddy's business." I lied smoothly. What I really wanted was to look around his office and see if I could spot that gold watch from the photo. He showed me around proudly like a peacock showing off its feathers. Frank's office hadn't changed much. Same big desk, same leather chairs, same family photos lined up like toy soldiers. That's when I saw it sitting in a small bowl next to his computer. The watch from the photograph. "That's a beautiful watch," I said casually. "Is it new?" Jake looked over and shrugged. "Dad's old watch. The band's been loose for years. Actually, it went missing for a while about 4 years ago." My heart started racing. "Oh really? Where did you find it?" "Emma found it at some fancy hotel when we went to her cousin's wedding. Must have fallen off during dinner or something. Lucky she spotted it, right?" Lucky indeed. So Emma had been at a hotel with Frank's watch 4 years ago. The same watch that ended up in a hotel room photo with her barely dressed. The pieces were starting to fit together like a puzzle, and I didn't like the picture they made. I spent the rest of the week playing detective. I visited 3 fancy hotels downtown, pretending to plan my own anniversary party. At the Grand Plaza Hotel, I struck gold when I met Tommy the bartender. "Mrs. Mitchell." Tommy's face lit up when he saw me. "How's Mr. Frank doing?" My heart sank. Tommy didn't know Frank had died. "He passed away 2 months ago, Tommy." "Oh no, I'm so sorry. He was such a good man. Used to come in here regular, especially these past few years." Tommy wiped down a glass sadly. "Always with that pretty blonde lady, your daughter-in-law Emma, right?" The room felt like it was spinning. "They came here together often." "Oh yes, every month or so. Usually Tuesday afternoons. Mr. Frank always ordered whiskey, and she liked those fancy pink drinks." Tommy paused, studying my shocked face. "You didn't know." I managed to keep my voice steady even though my world was crashing down. "Frank mentioned meeting clients here. I just wasn't sure which hotel." But Tommy was already backtracking, probably sensing he'd said too much. "I mean, it was probably just business meetings, right? Your husband was always talking about expanding the company. Business meetings where your daughter-in-law poses for intimate photos in hotel rooms." "I don't think so." I ordered a soda I didn't want and sat at the bar, my head spinning with this new information. Frank and Emma had been meeting secretly at this hotel for years. The photograph proved their relationship had crossed lines it never should have crossed. But why hide the evidence instead of telling Jake the truth? Then it hit me like a lightning bolt. Frank hadn't hidden that photograph to protect Emma. He'd hidden it to protect Jake. My husband had discovered Emma's betrayal, but instead of destroying his son's marriage, he'd kept the secret and lived with knowing the woman Jake loved was fake. As I sat there, a man in an expensive suit approached me. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm sorry for your loss." I looked up at a stranger with a nervous smile. "Do I know you?" "Tom Bradley. I was Frank's business partner on a few deals. I heard about his passing at the hotel bar." He glanced around nervously. "Funny running into you here, actually. Frank and I used to meet here sometimes." My detective instincts kicked in. "Really? When was the last time you saw him?" Tom's eyes shifted away. "Oh, months ago. Before he got sick." He was already backing away. "I should go. Again, my condolences." He disappeared into the elevator before I could ask more questions. But now I had a name, Tom Bradley. And something told me he was the final piece of this messy puzzle. Finding Tom Bradley was easier than expected. My neighbor Helen knew everyone in town through her book club connections. Within 2 days, Helen had arranged for me to accidentally bump into Tom at the monthly charity lunch at the Grand Plaza Hotel. Tom looked terrified when Helen introduced us, though he tried to hide it behind a fake smile. "Mrs. Mitchell, so nice to see you again." His handshake was sweaty and nervous. "You too, Tom. You mentioned knowing Frank well." "Business acquaintances," he said quickly, then excused himself to get a drink. I watched him from across the room, checking his phone constantly, drinking too fast, looking around like a scared rabbit. When he stepped outside to take a call, I moved close enough to listen, pretending to admire the hotel's garden. "I told you not to call me here," he whispered harshly into his phone. "Sarah Mitchell is at the same event." "No, I don't think she knows anything, but we can't be too careful." The timeline got messed up when Frank died early. We were supposed to have more time. Timeline got messed up. More time for what? I snuck back inside before he finished his call. That evening, I sat in my living room with all the evidence spread out on my coffee table. Frank had discovered something about Emma and Tom. Tom was planning to leave town soon. Frank's death had disrupted their timeline for something bad. But Frank had been smarter than they knew. He'd hidden the evidence where only I would find it, trusting that I'd put the pieces together eventually. "Well, Frank, this useless old wife was about to finish what you started." I spent the weekend planning like a general preparing for war. By Monday, I had copies of everything and a plan that would give Emma exactly one chance to tell me the truth. Tuesday afternoon I called Emma. "Emma, it's Sarah. Could you come over? There's something important I need to discuss." Her voice was carefully neutral. "Of course. Is everything okay?" "We'll talk when you get here," I said and hung up. The trap was set. Emma arrived looking perfect in a white dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. "Sarah," she said, fake kissing my cheek. "You sounded serious on the phone." "Please sit down." I gestured to my living room. "Can I get you some tea?" "That would be lovely." I made tea for a woman I was about to destroy, taking my time to build suspense. When I returned, Emma sat on my couch looking impatient. "So what did you want to discuss?" she asked with that practiced smile. I sat down and pulled out the manila envelope I'd prepared. "Actually, Emma, I think you know exactly what this is about." I placed the photograph on the coffee table between us. The change in her face was instant and complete. The fake smile vanished, replaced by pure fear. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "From my inheritance," I said calmly. That ugly painting was worth more than any of us realized. Emma stared at the photo, then looked up with calculating eyes. "What do you want?" The really delicious part was just beginning. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, settling back on my couch. "You're going to tell Jake everything. The secret meetings, the lies, all of it." Emma's mouth dropped open. "I can't do that. He'll divorce me." "Probably." I shrugged like we were talking about the weather. "Should have thought about that before you decided to betray him." She jumped up, pacing to the window. "You don't understand what it was like being married to Jake. He's so boring. Tom made me feel alive again." "How romantic," I said dryly. "I'm sure that'll comfort you when you're explaining everything to Jake." Check my watch. "You have until tomorrow to decide. The easy way or the hard way." She spun around with desperate eyes. "What if I refuse?" "Try me," I said coldly. "I buried a husband last month, discovered my son got millions while I got scraps, and learned my daughter-in-law has been lying to us for years. Do you really think I have anything left to lose?" Something in my voice scared her because she sank back into her chair looking smaller. "There's something else you should know about Frank's death," she said quietly. My blood turned cold. "What do you mean?" "Tom and I were supposed to meet Frank that day. He'd called us, said he wanted to discuss everything before telling Jake the truth." She swallowed hard. "We met him at the hotel restaurant. Frank was furious. He started yelling about honesty and family loyalty. Then he grabbed his chest and collapsed right there. The room seemed to spin." "You were with him when he died?" "In the restaurant. There were other people, waitresses, hotel staff. The ambulance came quickly, but it was too late." Her voice was barely a whisper. The doctors said his heart just gave out from the stress. For some reason this felt true. Frank had always had heart problems, especially when he got really angry or stressed. Why didn't you tell anyone you were there? Because we knew how it would look, Frank's daughter-in-law and her friend being the last people to see him alive. Tom's lawyer told us to stay quiet unless the police asked directly. I stood up slowly, my head spinning. You realize this doesn't change anything, right? You still betrayed Jake. You still lied to our family. I know, she said quietly. And I'm sorry. I know you don't believe me, but I really am. Maybe she was sorry. But sorry doesn't fix years of lies and betrayal. 24 hours, Emma. Decide how you want to handle this, with Jake or with the police. The next evening, I sat with Jake in his living room after Emma had confessed everything. The divorce papers were already being prepared. Emma had moved back with her parents, and Tom Bradley had left town that morning. I should have seen it, Jake said sadly. The signs were all there. You trusted her, I replied. That's not wrong, Jake. That's what makes you a good man. What happens now, Mom? Now we rebuild, I said simply. Mitchell Trucking will survive this. Your father built it to last. What I didn't tell Jake yet was that Frank had left me something else in that safety deposit box. Insurance papers that made me a full partner in the business, not just the recipient of a worthless painting. 6 months later, Mitchell Trucking was doing better than ever under our partnership. Jake had grown into the leader Frank always knew he could be, strong but kind, trusting but not naive. The flower painting hangs in my office now, right behind my desk where I can see it every day. It reminds me that sometimes the most valuable gifts come disguised as worthless things, and that real love finds ways to protect what matters most, even after death. As for Emma and Tom, they learned that actions have consequences, something they'd avoided for too long. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just living well and building something better than before. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Another new client wanting to hire Mitchell Trucking. I smiled as I answered. After all, this useless old wife had work to do. Thanks for listening to my story. Don't forget to subscribe to Granny's Voice and share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything? I'd love to hear from you.